Victor, and today we will be talking about economic globalization. So what is economic globalization? The IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, regards economic globalization as a process representing the result of human innovation and technological progress. So it is the process of countries becoming more connected and dependent on each other through trade, communication, and the movement of money and people. Let's go to the historical process. The global economic system, beginning in 1896, had reached its peak in 1914, which was called the first wave of modern globalization. So the first wave of modern globalization was the first major period of true economic integration. The Industrial Revolution created a huge need for raw materials and new markets for manufactured goods. But unfortunately, it ended in 1914 due to the World War I. 1914 was the year when World War I started. Countries closed their borders, redirected their economies to war production, and severed the global trade and financial ties that had taken decades to build. Now let's go to the human innovation, scientific revolution, and industrial revolution. So the scientific revolution was a fundamental shift in how people thought about the world. Instead of relying on ancient beliefs, thinkers began to use logic, observation, and experimentation to understand the natural world. This was not a revolution of machines, but of ideas. This new way of thinking laid the intellectual groundwork for everything that followed. It created the fields of modern physics, chemistry, and engineering, providing the theoretical knowledge needed to invent powerful new technologies. So to make the scientific or the ideas come into life, there comes the Industrial Revolution. This revolution was the direct result of applying scientific knowledge to solve practical problems. It transformed societies from agrarian and handmade economies to industrial and machine-based ones. So the Industrial Revolution provided the power to make and move goods on a global scale. This two-part process created the interconnected world we live in today. Now let's move on to the technological progress, the transportation, communication, and capitals used then and now. First, let us have the transportation. Innovations in transportation have been critical to moving physical goods across borders cheaply and efficiently. The invention of steam engine, powered steamships, and railroads, which were more faster and reliable than horse carriages. In the mid-20th century, the invention of the standardized shipping container revolutionized global trade. These large metal boxes could be easily moved between ships, trains, and trucks. This simple innovation made it possible to load and unload cargo incredibly fast, cutting shipping costs and allowing for the creation of complex global supply chains. Next, the communication. They used telegraph and telephone. These inventions were the first to separate communication from transportation. Instead of going from one place to another to communicate, people found a way to talk over telegraph and telephone. But now, the internet has been the single most powerful tool for globalization. It enables e-commerce, instant financial transfers, and real-time coordination of complex global supply chains. Mobile phones have extended this connectivity to billions of people worldwide, even in remote areas. Next are the capitals used. In 19th and 20th century, money were used to build railroads, steamships, and containerization as capitals. But now we are much focused in producing optic fiber cables and communication satellites, which allows money and information flow instantly across the globe. A smartphone might be designed in one country, have its components manufactured in several others, and then be assembled in yet another. This model, enabled by the other two factors, allows companies to produce goods more cheaply by leveraging the specific strengths and lower costs of different regions across the globe. Next, we have the supercomputers. Supercomputers are the brains behind the operation that enable increased trade on a global scale. Without them, the complex web of modern trade would simply fall apart. So supercomputers are used to, first, manage logistics. They track every container, ship and truck, and plan the most efficient routes for goods to travel across the globe. Next is the process financial transactions. They handle the trillions of dollars that move between banks and countries every day, making instant payments and investments possible. Last is the coordinate global supply chains. They allow companies to manage thousands of suppliers and factories in different countries in real time. This ensures that every part of a product, from a tiny screw to a major component, arrives exactly when and where it's needed. Lastly, we have the high-frequency trading. Millions of stocks purchases and sales between different cities of seconds. So high-frequency trading is a subcategory of algorithmic trading, but with an emphasis on speed. Firms that engage in high-frequency trading invest heavily in sophisticated technology and infrastructure, including servers placed physically close to stock exchange data centers, which is a practice called co-location, to reduce the time it takes for an order to travel. This minimal latency gives them a critical competitive advantage. The algorithms used in high-frequency trading are designed to analyze vast amounts of data, spot tiny price discrepancies, and execute trades faster than human traders can even comprehend. These transactions often aim to profit from minimal price changes, with the goal of making a small profit on each trade, but doing so thousands or millions of times a day. And that would be the end of my part, and the next topic will be discussed by the next report.
Now, we have another description of economic globalization. It is stated that the changes made by the economic globalization are the products of people, organization, institution, and technology. Economic globalization is a process driven by a complex interplay of people, organization, institutions, and technologies. Now, these factors don't act in isolation. Rather, they influence and reinforce one another to create an increasingly interconnected global economy. In the given example, we will see the interconnectedness between the four factors or components, which are the people, again, the organization, institution, and the technology. Now we have here a situation. For example, your online purchase. As you can see, there are four components, and these components had its own contribution to your online purchase. First, the people. Who are these people? Of course, it is you, the person who bought a product online. Next, the entrepreneur, who started the online store, the designer, who created the product you want to purchase, and of course, the factory worker, who made them, are all people whose actions are part of this global process. Another component is the organizations. The online store and the shipping company, like for example the LBC or the GNT Express, are all organizations. They coordinate production, marketing, sales, and delivery across different countries. Next is institutions. The institutions are the rules and agreements that make the transaction possible. Our country's laws on e-commerce and the international trade agreements that lower taxes or tariffs on imports. Now, without these rules, the transactions will be illegal or too expensive. And lastly, technologies. The technologies are the tools that enable the entire process. The internet allows you to browse and buy the product you want. The secure payment systems that process your transaction and the tracking technologies that let you follow your package as it moves across the world. So, what do we call this process of interconnectedness between the four components? It is called global economic integration. Now, global economic integration, a key aspect of globalization, means that different stages of making a product or providing a service are connected and managed across the various countries to create a single, unified offering. Another example of this is the manufacturing of a smartphone. A company in United States or South Korea designs the phone's hardware and software. Then the various components are produced in different countries based on where each part can be made most efficient. For example, the Taiwan or the United States manufactures the microprocessors. And then the screen or display is produced by a different company, likely in Japan or South Korea. The lithium-ion batteries for the phone are made in China. Then after that, all the individual components are then shipped to a final assembly plant, often located in either Vietnam or China, where the phone is put together. The finished phones are then shipped to different markets around the world, where they are sold to consumers by the design company's marketing and sales teams. Now I have another question. So, how is it possible to manage and coordinate global production and supply chains from different parts of the world? Well, it's because of the combination of technological innovations and supportive policies. This is possible today because of the advances in how we move things and people, as well as new policies that make it easier for businesses to work together worldwide.
Problem arising due to economic development. So, economic development brings growth and progress, but also create challenges. So, this shows that progress comes with both benefits and drawbacks. So, number one, poor nations and the people who inhabited them were and are subjugated by the operation of the global economy. So this means that the way the world is connected often puts the poor countries at disadvantage. So instead of being equal partners to trade and industry or service, they are put in the situation where they are controlled, exploited by the wealthier nation or the big companies. So in the past, so back then, European countries conquer most of Asia, Latin America, or Africa, and they gathered resources such as cotton, gold, spices, and the colonies weren't able to build their own factories, and they made them work with no pay. And that's why they are relying on the colonizer. Present, however, rich countries makes most of the rules and the organization, such as World Trade Organization, where poor countries exported cheap raw material. All in all, poor nations are subjugated, exploited, or controlled because they are trapped in the system where they provide the raw materials, but the wealthy nations and the big companies makes most of the profit. So is not all parts of the world gain equally from the growth of the global economy. So it means that while organization and international trade have created wealth and opportunities, the benefits are not shared fairly. So let's have an example. The cocoa industry in the West Africa. Countries like Ivory Coast and Ghana supply 60 to 70% of cocoa, which is the main ingredient in making a chocolate and other related products. But farmers there earns less than $1 a day, often living in poverty. Meanwhile, the big companies such as Nestle, Hershey's earns billions. So this shows how the economy grows. The chocolate factory earns hundreds of billions, but the benefits are not shared equally. Next is within nations, the poor tends or tended to suffer most when those nations are forced to repay their debts to other more developed nations. So, it means that when a country or when a poor country owns some money to a wealthier nation, that country will be prioritizing paying that debt. And paying that debt means cutting the budgets for services. And what are those services? Education, healthcare, food subsidies. And who suffers the most? Us. The poor people suffer when the government cut those services because wealthy elites can protect themselves. This creates a cycle of debt repayment, less social spending, more poverty. When Frieden in 2006 said that the global economy was not equally good for everyone and was bad for many. And for many people, it has actually made their life more harder. So, the global economy does not leave all the boats. It raises the yacht of the wealthy while leaving the poor people to drown.
Now let's proceed to the global economic structures, surplus and deficits. Okay. A good place to get a quick snapshot of global trade as well as net economic flows in and out of a nation state is by looking at its trade, surpluses and deficits. So, quick snapshot meaning quick look or overview. So global trade, it means buying and selling of goods and services between countries. So why global trade is important? Global trade is important because it lets countries buy what they don't have and sell what they have plenty of. So let's explain furthermore the trade surplus and the deficit. So, a trade surplus or a surplus in the balance of trade occurs when the value of a country's exports exceeds that of its imports. So, trade surplus happens when the value or money earned from exports is more than imports. So, exports, the meaning the things a country sells to other countries. And imports is the things a country buys from other countries. So for example, Philippines exports bananas worth of $100 million from USA, and Philippines imports cars worth of $80 million from Japan. So since $100 million exports is more than $80 million imports, the Philippines has a trade surplus of $20 million.
So a trade deficit, also called a trade gap, occurs when imports exceed exports. So it means a trade deficit happens when a country buys more goods from other countries than it sells. So in short, more money goes out than comes in. So here's an example for that. So the Philippines imports more oil, cars, and gadgets from other countries than it exports bananas, coconuts, or clothes. So since imports are greater than Philippines has to pay more money abroad than a trade deficit. So the next one is of special interest and importance are the positions of two global economic giants, the US and China trade balances. So US and China trade balances, the US and China are the world's two biggest economies. So their trade balance is very important because it affects the global economy. So here's an example for that. So the US buys, or in short, I mean imports, so a lot of products from China like clothes, electronics, and toys. So China sells, so they export much more to the US than it buys from them. So this means the US usually has a trade deficit with China, while China has the trade surplus with the US. So that's all.
Right morning everyone, I am Gino Iscaran from Btled ICT. Who are the actors that facilitate economic globalization? Globalization has opened the doors for other non-state authority and actors in driving economic globalization. Non-state actors include international economic organization, private sector led by multinational companies, central banks, and civil society. So when you say non-state actors, it means that this sector is not under by government or more likely private. There's one actors that facilitate the economic globalization. Number one, international economic organizations. These global groups lend money to nations, set the rules for trade and finance worldwide. They also give advice to the governments on their economies for better improvement. Also, their main goal is to keep the international economic system stable and fair. Example of this, if there's one country that has a economic crisis, then this international organization lend money to that nation for better economic recover, to prevent also the economic loss or collapse. But with the condition where they revise their economic policy for better recovery. So here's the second one, the actors that affect the economic globalization. The second one is the regional organization. Regional organizations are created by neighboring countries to make agreements with each other. They work to increase the cooperation and economic ties within their specific region. The best example for this is the ASEAN, where the neighboring country creates lag agreement para sa usa ka butang, just like importing goods or exporting goods. Creates lag agreement to lower the tariffs. Tariffs means taxes on imports. Once they low the tariffs, mas smooth ang negotiation o mas cheaper ang baligya. And that's how it works ang regional organizations, just like ASEAN. So here's the third actors that affect the economic globalization. Multinational companies. These are large companies that operate in many countries around the world. They build factories, create jobs, and introduce new products and technology wherever they expand. The best example for this is the brand Apple, where every part of Apple is not only created in one country, it created in different countries like Vietnam, Taiwan, like that. So we're going to think why they do that, because diba kung sa different country pa nila i-ubrahon, meaning mag-pay pa sila sa shipping fee. So here's the factors while I've searched. Number one is the low labor cost. So sa dira nga paraan, mas makatipid sila og sa raw materials. Kay wala ga-exist sa isa ka lugar ang ilangan need para dira nga parts. So nag-build sila factories where nga mas abundant ang kana nga material para mas makatipid sila.
Bright morning. I am Annabel J. Cabahog.
Central banks, they are considered as one of the most powerful institutions in the world economy since they can lead economic development. Central banks are like big boss bank of the country because they don't serve regular customer directly but control and guide the whole banking system. They are very powerful because they can influence how money flows in the economy. For example, they can decide how much money should circulate, set interest rate, and make rules to keep banks safe. By doing this, they can help control inflation, keep the economy stable, and support growth. That's why central banks are considered one of the most powerful institutions in the world economy because they have the tools to guide and even speed up a country's economic development. Major driver of the economic globalization. So, global civil society refers to the groups of people and organizations around the world who come together to raise their voices about the global issues. The global civil societies has made its mark in global development arena, particularly during the UN Conference on the Environment and Development in 1992. They became more visible during the UN Conference of Environment and Development in 1992, where they shown their influence in global discussion. Global civil society seen as either composed of individuals or groups of individuals disadvantaged by the effects of the globalization of the world economy. They protest and seek alternatives, while on the other hand, this group are often made up of individuals who are disadvantaged or negatively affected by globalization. So they protest, demand change, and propose alternatives. Global social movement constituting a basis for alternative to a new world order. Global social movements that push for a fairer and more sustainable world order. In short, global civil society is a powerful driver of economic globalization because it connects people worldwide to work for change.
Wallerstein Modern World System. Wallerstein Modern World System is a sociological and economic theory that was proposed in 1974 by a sociologist named Emanuel Wallerstein. The world system is the result of increasing interdependence of cultures and ecosystems that were once relatively isolated by distance and boundaries. Interdependence of countries describes how nations rely on one another for goods, services, and economic resources, creating a globally interconnected system where the action of one nation have a significant consequences to others. The world system is largely self-contained system with a set of boundaries and definable lifespan. Self-contained signifies that the system's life and development process are largely internal, operating according to its own logic despite existing in a shared global context. The world system have existed before and not a unique feature of the contemporary world. Because if we're going to compare the world system in the past and the world system that we have right now is different. As what we have discussed, world system before is self-contained. However, right now in contemporary world, we are now living in a system where it embodies fairness to all nations. In the past, the system that binds the world together was based on political and military domination. In this period, or in this phenomenon, feudalism and colonialism has been exercised. Where in feudalism, it's more on land ownership, while in colonialism, this is a system where powerful countries directly controls less powerful countries and their resources to increase its own power and wealth.
In the past, the system that binds the world together was based on political and military domination. So, for a long time, the world was controlled by big and strong countries or leaders who had armies and used force to rule others or to rule other country. Now, let us proceed to the modern world system. So the modern world system, or also known as the modern capitalist world economy. So the word capitalist was used because the system was driven by businesses and the pursuit of profit. Views the world as a single interconnected economic system. It means that what happens in one country's economy can affect other country. For example, if a factory in one country closes down, it might affect the companies who buy their products in another country based on economic domination and exploitation. So the system isn't always fair. Some countries have more economic power and they can use it to get what they want from other countries. So when we say domination, it means that they have a lot of control, and we say exploitation, they take advantage of others, often by getting raw materials or labors for a low price to get or to make a big profit. Focuses on relationships and power dynamics between countries. So the system is not just all about money, it's also about who has the power. So it looks at how different countries relate to each other, with some are being in charge and some are being controlled. So these differences shapes the way goods and money flow around the world. The world system is arranged according to influence. We have the core, semi-periphery, and periphery. So I will just give a brief information about these three. Now let us first discuss the core. The most economically dominant countries with the monopolistic high profit production processes. So these are the most powerful countries around the world. So they have the best technology and they usually get or make a big profit. So these countries include the USA, Germany, and Japan. Next, we have the semi-periphery, countries that share characteristics of both core and periphery, often acting as a buffer. So, the semi-periphery are those countries that mix with both rich and poor. So they are not as strong as the core countries, but they are more powerful also than the other countries. So these countries are include the Brazil, India, and China. Now let's proceed to the periphery. These are the poorest countries, so they usually produce raw materials and provide cheap labor for richer countries. So these are the most poorest countries around the world, and they usually sell raw materials like wood or oil, and they sell it to the richer countries with very low price. And these countries include the Central America, Southeast Asia, and the Africa.
So bright morning again, everyone. I am Janie Amaris, and today we will discuss the three, which is the core, semi-periphery, and the periphery. But first, let's read what is the core. So the core consists of the strongest and most powerful nation in which technologically advanced, capital-intensive products are produced and exported to the semi-periphery and the periphery. So, in short, the core it is the richest and most powerful nation. Example, I will give you an example. Example is the Japan. They are technology advanced, and then they can make or create a robot that can help the people around them. Another example is the Germany. So the core it is they are high industrialized and technology advanced. They make and export expensive high-tech products like cars, computers, and all. Now let's proceed what is semi-periphery. So let's read first. Semi-periphery it is the consist of industrialized third world nation that lack the power and economic dominance, and the core nations some were exploiting and exploited. Example here is the Brazil and the India. So in short, the semi-periphery it is they are in between countries. They are industrialized but not rich as dominant as core. So core is higher than semi-periphery. Core and then semi-periphery. So the semi-periphery is usually act as a buffer zone between rich and poor nation. So core and periphery it's in the middle, because we will discuss later what is the bottom of semi-periphery, which is the periphery. But first we will discuss the difference between the core and the semi-periphery. So the core is the richest. Okay, remember that guys, the core is the richest, while the semi-periphery is in the middle. Is in the middle of the core and in the middle of periphery. So example here is Brazil, India, South Africa. They can manufacture goods and grows economically but still depend on the richest countries for technology and investment. So like the semi-periphery is in the middle. Kumbaga, ara pa lang sila sa tunga-tunga, hindi pa sila core, because they still need a manufacture goods when it comes to technology in the core and the richest countries. Now let's discuss what is periphery. So let's read what is periphery. I'm sorry guys, because my presentation is in my laptop, so that's why. So the periphery, let's read. Periphery consists of nations whose economic activities are less mechanized and are primarily concerned with exporting raw materials and agriculture goods to the core and semi-periphery. So that's what I'm saying, guys. The periphery class it is in the bottom. Kumbaga, core, semi-periphery, and then periphery. So, ang mga periphery, it is the kumbaga, hindi pa sila sang advanced katama. Kontra sa semi-periphery, they can create, they can make, but still need the manufactured goods in core nation, in the richest nation. So, the periphery is the poorest and less developed countries. So, in short, the core is the richest and the semi-periphery is in the middle. Kumbaga, they can develop but still need the equipment or the materials or the manufactured goods in the core nation, which is the richest countries. While in the Periphery is the poorest, and it's in the bottom of the periphery. So that's the difference between three. The core is the richest, the semi-periphery is in the middle, and the periphery is the poor countries. So that's all. Thank you. I hope you learn a lot from me.